Welcome to the 2022 local election candidate videos, made possible by a partnership between Collin County Votes, which is an initiative of the Collin County Business Alliance, the Allen, Frisco, McKinney, and Plano Chambers of Commerce. I'm Leanne Libby with Community Impact Newspaper, and I'm excited to introduce our viewers to Kelley Rowley, running for Allen ISD Place 5. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to jump right in. So the first question, not everyone understands exactly what school board trustee roles and responsibilities are. Can you
Mhm.
explain to us in your own words what the role entails?
Sure. So, as a trustee, we are responsible for setting policy for the district. We are responsible for hiring and, if necessary, firing the superintendent and evaluating the superintendent. The superintendent is our only employee of the board, and we're responsible for setting the tax rate. And then we review things like the budget and things like that. But those are our really three primary responsibilities. There is a lot of misconception. It's a much higher level job than I think most people understand.
Well, great. Thank you. Well, so tell us about what would your top 2 to 3 policy priorities be if elected?
So, right now we are very concerned with teacher recruitment and retention. Obviously, that's a big problem, not just here in North Texas or even Texas, but nationwide. The last couple of years have been really tough on schools, and we've lost some teachers and to, retirement, whatever. So, retaining and recruiting those new teachers, convincing people that the education is a great place to be. That's one of our big ones. And then working on some of the funding mechanisms. Um, for a school district like Allen, where our enrollment is pretty flat now, there's no way for us to raise more income without significantly raising the tax rate, which obviously we don't want to do. We don't want to do that. We all live here in Allen. We don't want to pay more taxes. Uh, but we have to have more income from the state in order to be able to pay for increasing costs of things. So those are a couple of them.
No, great. Thank you. So, how has the pandemic impacted your school district, and how, if elected, would you work to address these issues?
So the biggest impact that we've seen, and again, this is not unique to Allen, is the learning loss. A lot of kids have fallen behind. Not all of them, of course, but a significant number. And I know that there have been some initiatives within the Texas legislature to help mitigate that. It was probably a very aggressive schedule on their part, and we know that this will take some time. So it's really just putting those resources into identifying the students with the gaps, not just assuming that everyone wholesale has gaps or the same gaps, but identifying those gaps and putting the resources toward those places where they're most needed to really help those kids catch back up and get back on track. That's probably the biggest thing we've seen.
Well, so you mentioned it already. We're hearing a lot more and more about the difficulties around attracting and retaining teachers. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on how to address this issue?
Well, obviously, the greatest solution would be if the state could provide the funding for us to pay teachers a lot better. I mean, that would be the biggest thing. That's a pretty uphill battle that we are all trying to fight and trying to get them to do. But in the meantime, we look for other ways that we can let teachers know that they're appreciated. We do a lot of different teacher appreciation things. We try to provide benefits with some medical things. We've done some different things. Obviously, there's a TRS plan that the health that they can buy into, and we've tried to be a little bit more creative. We try to contribute as much as we can, and I think part of it is at a higher level. It's making sure that people understand how valuable public education is and how important it is to us as a society and what it means to society to have an educated populace. I think some of that's getting a little bit lost in some of the rhetoric. At the start of the pandemic, we saw everybody was like, oh my gosh, teachers are the best things ever. They're trying to do this at home. Parents are like, oh my gosh, teachers are awesome. And that already seems to have fallen off somewhat. And it's a little disconcerting. Maybe not so much locally, but regionally and nationally and at the state level, we're seeing some of that from a political standpoint, seeing some attack on public schools. So trying to combat that and to show that Texas schools are amazing and we can do great things if we all work together.
So, what would you like to see the legislature address to help support public education in your district in the next legislative session?
So, like I said, one thing is finance. They've done some tax compressions, which have been great for taxpayers. And to a certain degree, they have not to a certain degree, but they've made up those differences. Like we've had to compress our tax rate, and so the state is contributing more than they were before. But with the way the funding is set right now, it's not sustainable by the state. And they're not giving us any increases, so that even though we all know across the board, costs for everything have gone up. So our teachers' costs of living have gone up. But unless we are getting more funding, we are not going to be able to pay teachers the raises that we want to be able to pay them, things like that. So that's one thing that we're definitely focused on. And in particular, there's a piece of the funding called golden pennies. I won't get too detailed, but because school finance is insanely complicated, but there's a piece that they have really compressed that they could give us back basically without any impact to our taxpayers, that would allow us to keep more of our funds locally. So that's one big piece right there. And then just addressing some of the learning loss things, and unfunded mandates is another thing. The state loves to do those. They love to say, well, you need to do A, B, and C, but by the way, we're not going to give you any extra money for that. So, we want you to do full day pre-K, which we all agree. Full day pre-K is a fabulous idea, but they're not going to give us any extra funding for that. So we're going to have more kids and more teachers, but we have to figure out how to do it within the same amount of funding that we currently have. And as a school district without a lot of enrollment growth, like I said, right now, the way that the funding is, it's tied directly to enrollment growth. To get more money, you have to have more kids. Well, we don't have more kids, so we're not going to get more money. So those are a couple of the big things.
Thank you. So we live in a very diverse area in every sense of the word. Can you talk about how important it is to consider and incorporate diversity into your decisions on school board?
It's critical. We have to recognize that our kids come from a variety of backgrounds, both socioeconomically, religiously, racially. We have a huge, great mix of kids in Allen, and it's awesome. And but we do have to remember that, and it's absolutely important that we remember that we can't make decisions based on a generic profile of a student, because not all students look the same. They come from different places. They have different needs. So it is absolutely important that we recognize that our kids are all very different.
So last question, can you tell us something about the school district that makes you excited about the future of this next generation in our community?
Sure. There's a lot of things. Allen is a great place. We have a really strong community, we're very fortunate. A lot of people don't know about we have one high school, but we're the largest high school in the state, even though we're not the largest school district. But that means we're all Allen Eagles. And that's a big deal to us. And I think that's one thing that we bring that's fairly unique for Allen that is really great. But in terms of just excited for the future, first of all, we have a fantastic administration, and they are so good about looking ahead. We've got our SOAR 2030 plan. We did a strategic plan that really took us out, and it's a living document. We look at it all the time, what needs to be tweaked. But we did look out all the way to 2030 and say, okay, what do we need to be looking at? What do we need to be planning for? What are changes that we're going to be seeing? Things like that. But when it comes to the kids, you just talk to some of these kids, and you talk to our high school seniors that are graduating, and I'm just blown away at how amazing these kids are. We just had a breakfast to recognize our national merit finalists, and one of them is a published author. And it's like, and the things and the places they're going to school and the things they want to study and the things that they're doing as project at high school are just like college kids weren't even doing that when I was in school. So I just think that the kids today, if they're given the right opportunities and the right tools, they are resilient, and they are incredibly smart, and they are kind and courageous, and they're problem solvers. We just have to give them the right tools from a very early age and help them learn how to use those things. And we're really going to be in good hands. It just really is exciting.
Well, Ms. Rowley, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today and allow the voters the opportunity to hear directly from you on these important issues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.